Good afternoon to one and all present here. The Department of English of Sri Shankarlal Sundarbai Sashun Jain College cordially welcomes you all for the final day of the FTP on Communicative English. The topic for today is receptive and productive skills in English communication. May I request Ms. Mohina Priya, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to welcome the gathering.
Thank you, Professor Gayatri. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A hearty welcome to one and all. On behalf of Sri Shankarlal Sundarbai Shasun Jain College for Women, I am privileged to welcome Dr. Sumati Shivakumar, Assistant Professor of English, AM Jain College, Chennai, to the final day of our one-week faculty development program on communicative English. I also welcome all our participants who have enthusiastically joined us today to take home the fruits of this session. Today, our resource person, Dr. Sumati Shivakumar, will continue with the topic Receptive and Productive Skills in English Communication. During yesterday's session, the resource person shared her knowledge acquired both by ways of teaching and learning from her students. The session began with an important question: what do we mean by communication skills? Dr. Sumati Shivakumar made us understand that communication skill is a combination of language skills and soft skills. She then took us through the first unit of the communicative English syllabus, focusing on teaching and learning methodologies of teachers and students, respectively. We were enthralled by her analysis and understanding of the communicative English syllabus. In today's session, ma'am will take us through the remaining units, letting us know the nuances of teaching and learning the subject communicative English. With no further delay, I invite Dr. Sumati Shivakumar to take over the session. Over to you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Department of English, Shasun Jain College. It's such a pleasure to be back, though on a virtual mode, getting to know the fraternity, the teaching fraternity, not just English, but I understand teachers of subject other than English are also here. So that is such a warming, that's such a heartwarming idea, because English is not confined to the teachers of English, irrespective of what subject you teach and learn. It is English that eventually matters. It is a language that eventually matters. And easier we understand the language, effectively we use the language, effectively we will be able to, efficiently we will be able to communicate. So with no further delay, as she said, I shall go to the presentation right away. We'll get started with the second unit. And like yesterday, I shall start the slideshow. Yeah. So just a recap of what we did yesterday. We looked at what the first unit comprises. And we noticed that there are 4 sections. The first and second unit of the textbook that we follow has 4 sections. The traditional listening, speaking, reading, writing. And then we have the study skills and grammar in context. Just a recap of what we did yesterday, as you rightly pointed out, communication skill is essentially a combination of language skills and soft skills. And it's a permutation combination based on kind of a formula. This much of language and this much of soft skills, the product would be probably negotiation or easy, friendly communication or sense of humor, depending on what ingredients we add in language and soft skills. So eventually, communication is trying to convey what we have inside our minds through the language that we have acquired over a period of time. And in the first unit, we saw a kind of, not exactly from the basics, there was a mixture of fundamental ideas of communicative concepts and certain complex ideas. So the fundamental ideas would be introduction, how to introduce ourselves, how to greet, and the complex ideas would be the grammatical concepts, pronunciation, and how to use a dictionary to understand pronunciation. And even more complex ideas would be probably the difference between American and British English. So here in this unit, like the first unit, there's a lot of theoretical inputs that I've given. That's probably to get the teachers oriented into understanding the communicative concepts much better. All the while, we always thought it's sharing of ideas or exchange of ideas. We never really thought, how do we do that? And how do we do that effectively? And even more importantly, how do we do that in a manner that the receiver understands and responds in exactly the way I want it? For example, whatever I'm telling you now, I have a certain intention in saying what I'm saying. And I expect, or I would love to make my listeners understand what I say in a certain way. And if that happens, if my listeners understand, my audience understands exactly the way I want it to be understood and responds in a manner that reveals that understanding, then I have communicated effectively. So that is the bottom line of communication. And that is why Shannon Weaver model, you have different models of communication, which always talks about a sender, a receiver, and a response. Now, we always looked at these things as very mechanical concepts, but actually what I convey, what you receive and respond is exactly what I want as a speaker or as a sender of a certain message. So the message that I send is exactly what I want you to understand. And you, if you understand exactly the manner in which I want you to understand, then we have communicated effectively. And if that is revealed in your response, then we have communicated effectively. So this is all to communication. But, and that's but with a capital B, there's so many possibilities that we can actually achieve by the combination of language and soft skills. And if we have the right balance of the two, then we can definitely communicate effectively. So the second unit takes us through some of these concepts. Some are mentioned, but some are not mentioned. And I think the inputs that I would like to share with you will help you make those concepts revealing not only to a teacher, but also to a revelation, not only to the teacher, but also to the learners. So first of all, there's a lot of discussion about listening with a purpose. I don't think any of us can listen without a purpose. That would just be hearing. Effective listening, well, any communication has to be effective. If that is not the aim, there's no purpose in communication. Tonal variation, more to do with speaking, and how we saw yesterday, by varying the tone, we will be in a position to convey much more than what the words state. And then listening for information, asking and giving information. Now, for all these, the grammatical concepts that are involved, that are projected at the end, should ideally be given here, because when you ask for communication information and when you give information, we use a lot of imperative verbs. So if the grammar concepts had come in the beginning, this is the point I suggested yesterday too. So I would ideally ask the teachers to do the grammar concepts first and then go to the communicative concepts, so that they really understand what the grammatical concepts are and how that can be applied in context. And that is what grammar and context is all about. Applying grammatical concepts in context. And then reading and writing, this again a very prolonged discussion of skimming and scanning. But unfortunately, again, the textbook does not tell us why, when, and how. Why not, how not, and when not to skim or scan. This concept is very crucial. And unless we understand this, there's no point knowing what is skimming when we do not know how to skim or scan. And different types of reading, analyzing a prose passage, analyzing poem, analyzing a short story. Well, that gives a lot of insight into how we have to read literature and imaginative writing. And in writing, the task is to write paragraph and understand how a paragraph can be constructed and how paragraphs can be constructed. The first level is to know how to expand an idea into a paragraph and how to connect different paragraphs, how to expand on that further than just a paragraph. And then the different kinds of paragraphs that are possible. Study skills, it talks about using the internet. Now, what is given in the material is very, very fundamental. I'm sure our students have gone past those. So I would like to share some more insights into uh, how we can browse the net effectively and what we have to focus on while browsing the internet. Yes. So we'll go to the unit right away. So the purpose of listening can be varied, and there are as many purposes as there are listeners. So putting them in a short table and saying it is for this reason that we are listening is kind of reducing the power of listening itself. So you can listen for pleasure. We listen to music for pleasure. We listen to music for therapy. So listening to a particular note can have so many purposes attached, right? So what is given here is probably tip of the iceberg. Listening has a lot more benefits than just this. So effective listening essentially wants us to focus on the content, look for familiar words, identify chunks of words and give core meaning to the utterance. So when we listen to someone speaking or even to a music, we would notice that as long as the song is still not familiar to us or we have not grasped the lyrics thoroughly, we would feel like listening to the song over and over again. But once we get the lyrics, we won't be so keen to listen. We probably, good singers would like to sing the song rather than to listen to the song. Right? So, this is the power of listening. Once you imbibe what is being said, once you get complete hang of what is being said, you don't need the speech per se. It's already there within you, and you have to search inside to get to know what is being said. So they are talking about, the textbook talks about oracy. Oracy is speaking, and it is not directly connected to listening, but we can make it connected to listening because, sorry, oracy essentially talks about how we try to express ourselves and how what attempts we make to express ourselves well. So this is where the soft skills component comes in. It's your voice. The louder you speak, the softer you speak. When do you speak loudly? When do you speak softly? And then what kind of vocabulary you use, what kind of choice of words, when you're in a certain frame of mind, what words come to your mouth. Obviously, all these have a lot more connection than what we understand of it. It's the mind which tells the tongue to pronounce certain words. So, frame of mind directly, it is directly involved in the words that we pronounce. If we are in happy frame of mind, sweet words come out of our mouth. If we are angry, obviously, the words that come out of our mouth will not be sugar coated, right? It will not be dipping in honey. When we are sad, we express more through tears than words. So emotional quotient, emotional state of mind, that matters in what and how we speak. So if we are aware of the audience, if I know my audience are paying attention to me, then obviously I will express myself in a manner, the connection will already be established. So I will be comfortable talking to the audience, know what the audience wants, and I will be able to say. But if there is a gap, if the audience are not listening to what I'm saying, this is exactly what happens in our classroom. If our students are not paying attention to what we are saying, we lose that, that energy, the energy level just drips down. It just goes down. And when it goes down, there will be no power in what we say. And obviously, the thoughts that we wanted to share, the ideas that we wanted to give for that particular text, the supporting ideas that we wanted to give will all run away from our memory. So those words will not come to our mouth. So much depends. A good teacher is not a teacher who teaches well, but a good teacher is actually made by the students. Good students make good teachers. So the connection with our students makes a teacher a better teacher from being just a good teacher. So that is where the social and emotional context of oracy, the social and emotional strand of oracy comes into the picture. So these are some of the things that help us more in our teaching. As teachers, these can help us. It's not confined to speaking alone. It is confined to, it is related more to teaching. As teachers, we will be able to relate to these things. One off day, something happened somewhere. It could be the traffic, it could be the home, it could be arriving late in to our institution, or we could have forgotten something. Some reason, something has disturbed us. It will show in our teaching. So that is what oracy is about. That is what the social and emotional strand of oracy is connected to factors outside the physical self. And then, of course, a good teacher obviously needs input, must be widely read, must be thorough, must be capable of answering student queries, not questions, I say queries. So if all these are possible, then obviously we have a good teacher, a good speaker. So the voice element per se depends on not just on the loudness or the degree of loudness with which we speak, but the manner in which we are able to modulate our voice. So you'll notice while we teach, we begin very softly and suddenly the voice slowly raises, and towards the end of the class, there's something like a crescendo and it comes to a softer tone once again. We can notice that happening. Now, all this is not because we are consciously raising or lowering our voice, but because what we try to convey, we are so connected to the point that we are trying to convey. Our focus is on what we are saying. And that is the reason why when there is a small disturbance, someone comes in, someone comes late, or some bustling happens inside the class, that disturbs our stream of thought and we will forget what we wanted to say. Now, all these are connected, all these are psychological factors that involve in speaking. And if our speech is disturbed, naturally what the students listen will also be disturbed. And that is where the connection to listening comes in. So the speaker's voice modulation, that can have the students engrossed. If we speak in a monotone, say for example, take a look at the voice element of the physical strand of oracy. It refers to the tonal variation and then the fluency and the pace of speaking, the speed. Now this will put even the speaker to sleep, leave the listeners aside. We need voice modulation. We need to be a little bit of we need to introduce a little bit of theater in our speech. We must be dramatic. So we need not be melodramatic, we need not be over dramatic, but we must have some expressive skills in order to capture the attention of our audience, of our students. As teachers, this is far more important than a public speaker who speaks once in a month or once in a week in some stage, which the listeners obviously are not so interested and they are not going to write an exam on what he has spoken. Our students are going to write, and we must be wary of these factors. So tonal variation, as I told you yesterday, there is no need to go into the tonal variations of English. This can be best confined to English literature students, linguistic students who need to understand the different tones in English. We Indians have thousands of tones. I speak with a million tones. You can speak with a million tones. So your tone is very different from my tone. What I mean by tone is intonation, not the attitude of the speaker as we saw yesterday, but the intonation. My intonation is, very, very specific to the way I speak. It borders on linguistic concepts like idiolect and register. So it's the way I speak. It's my style of speaking, and have every one of us has a unique style of speaking. Nobody can imitate. Even those who do mimicry, they have to take a lot of effort to mimic every possible tone, intonation pattern that the speaker speaks. Even they can imitate very, very, very obvious or something that is conspicuous about a particular speaker. Not every tone that the speaker is capable of producing, not every intonation pattern that the actors are capable of producing. So this is necessary to the extent that students should know how to ask a question, how to make a request, and how to order or instruct something to somebody. So I think if we confine ourselves just these 3 or 4 tones, they need not know whether it is a falling tone or a rising tone, doesn't matter. What is more important is a communicative aspect. A question should be asked like a question. An order should be given like an order. A request must be made in a very polite manner. I cannot say, please open the door. I can't do that. I have to say, if I say please, it has to be said in a certain tone. Now, if I don't do that, then the language skill plus soft skill balance, there is an imbalance. There is no equivalence there. There is an imbalance. I'm not using the right soft skills for the right set of words. There is a mismatch and communication breaks down. Now, students do not know if I'm requesting them or, ordering them. So that will create miscommunication. That may also create confusion. So focus on tone can relate to just this. Okay, there are several activities given there, interesting ones. Students can read them in the right tone. So again, if you notice here, majority of them are questions, a few statements, and a couple of exclamatory marks. Now, I thought it is necessary for us to understand what is an exercise, activity, and task, because the textbook does not give that clearly. There is a confusion. For example, it calls it these set of tasks are called as activity. In another context, they're called as exercise. So we must understand what is an exercise, what is a task, and what is an activity. An exercise is on a specific concept, a repeated set of drills. Like what we do in physical education classes, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's the same thing that we do on a repeated mode to understand how that can be done, mathematical problems. So we have exercises on a similar kind of problems. So similar kind of grammatical structures, we can have exercises. So multiple tasks on a particular concept is exercise. A task is a single work that we do on something, just one. It's a task. When we have varied assorted tasks built into a single set of work, it is different. Unlike exercises, different verb forms, you'll have 10 sentences, insert the right verb form, right forms of the verb. That will be an exercise. And each one of them is a task, right? An activity is something on verbs, something on adjectives, some on structures, a picture puzzle, a combination of multiple things for achieving a particular, accomplishing something, reaching a particular destination. That would be an activity. To give you an example, you want to fold papers to make a boat. Now that is an activity where you keep folding papers, keep folding the paper in different ways, and at the end of it, you get a boat. Now that is an activity. So each fold is a task, right? First fold, first you fold it into two, and then you fold it into two again. So it's four fold of that paper, and then you fold one half into a triangle. The other side is folded into a triangle. Now each of these is a task, and multiple tasks are rolled into one activity, right? So I think I've made exercise, task, activity clear. So even if there is confusion in the book, I think as teachers, we can tell the students whether to do it as an exercise or an activity or a task. Now we must be clear because this is crucial for assessment. A task will not carry too many marks. An exercise will carry equal marks, and an activity, there will be split of marks for each. So that is how we have to define exercise, activity, and task, so that in an assessment format, we assign exact number of marks for each of these. It will not confuse us while evaluating them. Okay, so listening for information, we come to this part. Listening for information, there is a dialogue, and they are discussing about a particular restaurant. So each one is asking question and the other is answering based on their choices. And this is a beautiful dialogue. We can get our students, even in a virtual mode, we can get two of them to unmute their mics and read them. And as they read, they have to use the right form of intonation to ask questions. That has to be focused on. Now, these are other, they call it exercises. That's why I said these are not exercises. These are different activities. Complete the following is one. So this will be activity one. They have complete the following as one activity. State whether true or false is another activity, because there is nothing that they are learning. Exercise is repeated, task for a particular learning. Now, state whether it's true or false, they are not going to learn anything here. So that is a difference that we have to understand. Okay, asking for, this is an interesting part of the syllabus where they give a kind of a template, a prompter, some kind of prompts that help students construct sentences for asking for information in casual conversation, in formal conversation, in different contexts. Now, this is a very useful set of ideas that are disseminated here in the textbook, but we can add on to this, because in very, very formal contexts, we may not really use. For example, I wonder if you could tell me, it may sound very formal, but we will not be using it when we talk to our principal, for example. We don't go to our principal and say, excuse me, ma'am, I wonder if you could tell me if the Saturday is a working day or not. No, we don't do that. So we need to distinguish between what is formal and what is used in a formal context. This is a formal expression, not something that we use in formal context. So that has to be done. So there is another, they call it an activity again, the textbook. What I mean by they is the textbook. So there is another query, inquiry. So these are all contexts in which we ask for information. That's an interesting idea that is given here. So there is a role play that students have to create their own set of dialogue and do it in a class, which can actually be done in a virtual context too. Now, reading and writing, again, strategies, skimming and scanning are introduced. Now, this is an activity that can be done only in a physical, in-person classroom, where you give a passage and give two sets of instructions, and based on that they identify what is there in the passage and they discuss amongst themselves. So that cannot be done virtually, so I think we can skip that. Again, a lot of talk about scanning. We've already seen what is scanning, so we'll go to extensive and intensive reading. Now, students are very clear about intensive and extensive reading because their school textbook would have extensive reading as a short story. According to them, it's detailed and non-detailed, and that's a beautiful way of understanding. Detailed is intensive reading and non-detailed is extensive reading. But when you say detailed and non-detailed, it sounds very Victorian, and therefore the modern terms are intensive. Where you read intensely, you will be questioned on the core ideas of the text. In students' understanding, there won't be annotations from extensive reading, but there will be annotations from intensive reading, ERC, as they say, explain with reference to context. So according to them, this is how the difference happens, but we can add on to their understanding. There's a lot more. The textbook does talk about what is it that we look for in an intensive reading context and what do we look for in an extensive reading context. And this can be connected to skimming and scanning. So intensive reading, we scan the text, and extensive reading, we just skim the text. It's okay if we leave a few sentences here and there. Right. So there are questions. There is a passage on Pearl Buck's experience in China, and there are questions based on her experience. So this is a prose passage. It tells us how to read a prose passage, but the textbook does not tell us how to analyze a prose passage. That is what is important, because that is how we define whether something can be called prose or something is a imaginary narrative. That's a short story. So there will be personal reaction, because prose can always be written in first person. A short story can be written in first person unless the narrator is also a participant in the story. Whereas a prose in first person gives a more authentic face to what is said. And then we can summarize the meaning of a prose passage because there is some message that is being conveyed. We can identify the context. We can identify certain techniques like how it is structured, what kind of language is used, whether it is conversational style or whether the style is very tedious and formal, as we have in Bacon's essays or Charles Lamb's essays, or as easy and lucid as some of these 20th century fiction, non-fiction writers like Robert Lind or A.G. Gardiner. So all these we can analyze in a prose passage. And why are they important? Because it's these techniques that help us understand the meaning. And in each paragraph, we can see that there is a topic sentence, there is an explanation. It's generally called as PTEE. What is the point? What is the central point that the paragraph talks about? And where is that central point mentioned? That sentence is a topic sentence. It can be in the beginning, it can be in the middle, it can be at the end. There will be evidence, or first there would be explanation of this topic sentence, and then evidence or supporting ideas for the topic sentence. So that is how a paragraph is constructed, essentially made up of 4 to 5 lines minimum. So this is how a paragraph can be constructed. So you have a topic sentence. We can probably tell them to begin with a topic sentence and then expand, elaborate that particular topic in 2 more sentences. These 2 sentences support the idea that is said, and then 2 more sentences to probably explain what the topic is all about, and a summing up sentence or a sentence that carries forward to the next paragraph. So if we can tell them this technique, they will be in a position to write or compose a paragraph on a particular idea. Yeah, so this is the passage on Pearl Buck and her experiences in China. And then we saw the questions that are given in order to understand the passage. And then when we analyze a poem, what is it that we do? Poem is not the same as a prose passage. Not just because it is shorter in length or it has rhyme, there are so many devices that make poetry more delightful than prose, and that's why prose is called prosaic, while poetry has that power of delighting the reader. So who is the speaker? Sometimes the narrator merely is a spectator. Sometimes the narrator is also a participant. So it could be a third person narration where it is highly objective, or it could be subjective where the narrator is also a participant in the construction of the poem. So who's the speaker? Generally referred to as the poet persona. The mood, the tone, we can paraphrase it and make it look a lot more simpler. We can reduce some of those archaic expressions, some of those high sounding words that are given exclusively for rhyme or assonance, the delight in the sound, the theme, all these can be paraphrased and given in a more simpler form. So we need all these things to analyze a poem. Of course, the literary devices like metaphor, figures of speech, they also help in analyzing a poem. Unfortunately, the text consists of a poem by Emily Dickinson, which is very morbid. So I'm not taking that poem here. Of course, I'll be giving the poem a little later. But reading a short story, what is it that we have to look for in a short story? Before we read this short story, it's always nice to know. It could be a short story or a full-fledged novel. Get to know about the book before we start reading. See what people say. Generally, people say don't read what is there in the blurb because that can confuse you. That can probably even prejudice the reader. But I would ideally suggest, and that's what the textbook also says, do a little bit of research about the writer, the book, what it talks about, so that it's easy to relate to the book when we actually read it. Identify the themes, the meat and the potatoes of the story. That is that which actually make the story different from anything else. Why the book is better than something else, or why the book is not as good as something else, as the case may be. And then we need to analyze each story. It could be a short story, it could be a novel, doesn't matter. It's only the difference in length and the expanse. But analysis per se can be more or less the same. So these are things that we can tell the students, because though they don't do any literature in this semester, when they actually do literature, they can use all these techniques to understand and delight in literature. So these are some of the questions that we can get the students to ask. What really happened in the stories? Who were the characters? What was their role? So these are some of the questions that they can try to answer. And when they answer, they get a complete hang of what the story is. Yeah, so this is, I don't know, I don't want to use expletives that may not sound nice, but hope is a thing with feathers is so morbid. Emily Dickinson poems are like that, and it may probably not be the right choice. We can give a lot more beautiful poems that students will enjoy reading. And what is equally, no expletives. The textbook wants us to learn, excuse me, sorry. The textbook wants us to learn grammar from poetry. I'd be the last person to emphasize on that. Okay, so reading a short story. It's a short story by Langston Hughes. It's a beautiful story. I think you must read to enjoy the story. So I'm not going into the text per se, because responding to the text, again, there's a confusion about exercise 1, exercise 2. Now, these are not exercises aimed at learning something, but aimed at revealing our understanding of the text. So these are at best tasks. Okay. So how do you make inferences? How do you recall what is being read? How do you interpret the story? What is critical thinking? What is evaluative thinking? And how can we evaluate the story? All these are crucial pointers, but unfortunately, what is stated here is not sufficient. For example, for making inferences, when Mrs. Jones makes dinner, Roger sits far away from her purse. Now, unless the story is read, I'll give you a brief outline of the story. It's about a young boy who tries to pickpocket an old lady, but the old lady brings the boy home, gives him some food, cleans him, and gives him some money and asks him to go away. She does not penalize him. So this is I put the story in the crudest form. There's a lot more to it than just this. So the boy realizes his mistake, and he decides that he will not get into this kind of a situation in future. So that's a beautiful way of narrating the story. The narrative technique, everything about the story is beautiful. But when you try to dissect the story like this, then the charm of the story is somehow missing. Instead, get the students to think of situations that they have witnessed. Have they seen someone be so empathetic towards someone who's done a crime? Have they been pardoned by somebody after making that crime, after committing that mistake? Have their mothers, how have their mothers dealt with them? So what happens when we show kindness to someone who makes a mistake? So these are all ways to get them involved in the story rather than testing them on the nitty gritties of the story. Dissecting the story does not give delight in literature. Okay, so next is about paragraph and constructing a paragraph. This is something that we just saw, how 5 sentences can make up that paragraph and how we can use transitional phrases to link paragraphs. So in what context will we use these phrases? The table is a very, very useful table. If you browse the internet, you get a lot more than this, but this is probably the basic. This is fundamental that every learner should know. So different types of paragraphs, you can have description, you can have sequence, comparison, contrast. All these are definitely helpful. Now I'll focus a lot on this because this is where we need our students to learn, because they use technology extensively today. So we need the mention of several government portals which are authentic are given, but how do we identify what is authentic is not given there. We identify authentic sites by noticing the word S in HTTP. HTTPS says that it is secure. Without that S, it probably has a lot of things to offer, by way of malware and virus. So we must be wary of that. We must tell our students about that. And then we must also tell them if there is a tilde, a horizontal S, then it means it's a personal page within the website. It belongs to the author. The organization has got nothing to do with the material that is given there. So we need to know whether a particular article that we are referring to is objective or is it advocacy. If it talks about both sides of the argument, then it is objective. But if it is one-sided, then it is an advocacy article. We must not consider it, or try to read something that counters this view to frame our own opinions. And then there should be some suggested pointers. We can have a kind of a checklist. So some of the points that we can use for checking whether the article is trustworthy. This is to check if it is objective or advocacy, and then whether they have the authority to say what they have said. So if you have the contact details of either the author or the website, then to some extent we can believe that this article is authentic. The dates of publication, and is the article being constantly updated? It cannot give views that are outdated or facts that are outdated. So we must check for authority and accuracy. And then, of course, we should be able to look at the previous versions. Very often, the previous versions are also available, and it has to stay. That is what we mean by currency. Whether the article is up to date, has it been updated periodically? So that gives us a clue whether the author or the website owners have taken efforts to give us what is relevant. And then the comprehensiveness of the article, whether it covers everything connected to that point or is it limited in scope, that will be mentioned in the article itself, because very often the author says the scope of the article, probably also says what is not covered in the article. So that gives us an understanding of whether the article is comprehensive enough or should we do more reference to know what it is. So these are information that I have taken from this source in February 2014. Now, when you try to click this, probably the website doesn't open. That's because it's closed down. Okay. So anyway, the ideas that are stated there are universally valid ideas, and therefore I did not bother to double check it anywhere else. Now, grammar and context involving action. They are talking about discord and concord. To my knowledge, there is no term called discord in grammar. Discord is used when there is a mistake, not as a concept. Somehow, I don't know how they have introduced this. Anyway, there's no harm in knowing that it is the opposite of concord in terms of the concept. And then there can be different types of concord. Concord is subject-verb agreement. But what is so surprising is that the textbook has not given verb in detail and yet talks about concord. It gives only one part of the verb. The verbs here are action verbs, the different kinds of verbs. These are not given here, but our students need them. They need to know that there are different types of verbs, and action verbs are those that can be expressed dramatically, and what they use probably in Damsharads. So we can actually get our students to play Damsharads, unmute their video, make actions, and ask the others to find out what word they are using. And then these are typical things that you find in the internet, taken from the internet. Now, we must be aware of what is being said. We can't randomly take down images. There are so many errors in many of the images that are available in the internet. We must be conscious about what is being said and what we are sharing. So these are different aspects of verbs that we need to tell them. Of course, modals are talked about in the subsequent unit, but we must tell them that these are verbs that do not exist alone, but always join with the main verb. And then subject-verb agreement. Different contexts in which subject-verb agreement has to be considered, not given in the textbook, but I have introduced them here. So in singular, we need not tell them singular indefinite pronouns, but we just tell them everyone, neither, each. When you use everyone, when you use neither, when you use each, what form of verb we use. Similarly, when we use 50% of the pie, so the verb nearest to, the noun nearest to the verb, you consider that for subject-verb agreement. So pie has, pies have. So these are things that we need to tell our students. So I've given them all in detail. Now, grammar and context, as I told you, if we do this in the beginning and then go to the activities, I'm sure we can. Yeah, I'll stop this sharing. I'm sure we can tell the students how each of these is related to communication. Now, without that, there is no way we can, without an understanding of the grammatical concepts, getting them into communication does not really make sense. So, my suggestion to all would be start with vocabulary. Any language class, you begin with vocabulary. Let them learn 10 words with their meaning and pronunciation, spelling, syllabification, that's pronunciation essentially. Let them learn all these, maybe a sentence or two on how to use those words, then go to grammatical structures, and then come to the communication part. This is the manner in which communicative English can be best taught and learned. So this is Unit 3, Unit 4 and Unit 5, all three placed within the ambit of a single slide. So that tells us in terms of volume, it's very less, but in terms of difficulty levels, it's slightly higher. So here again, giving instructions is separated from asking for information. Giving directions and giving instructions are placed together. And then using the connectors that we learned in the previous unit. And then in reading and writing, this is a very, very important concept that our students, not only students, many of us may also not know how to distinguish fact from opinion. What constitutes factual idea and what is an opinion? We need to understand this. Now, the grammar and context is again verbals and modals. Suggestion is do that in the beginning and then come to the language part. So we look at Unit 4 now. Yeah. So listening and speaking, giving and following instructions. They have been told about use of the main verbs, the action verbs and everything, but they have never really been told that these verbs come in the beginning of an imperative sentence. So when you give instructions, you get the verb first and not the subject. The subject is understood. So this is a new construction. So when we teach them giving instructions or giving directions, we need to tell them how to structure their sentences. So these are typical ideas that you find in any manual on giving instructions. You must be direct, you must be clear, specific, age appropriate instructions, or one instruction at a time. The explanations have to be simple. All these are typical, but in a communicative class, what is more important is the manner in which we structure the instructions. So when we say instructions, we should know how to frame our sentences. So here are some phrases. These are more like, connectors rather than the actual structure of a sentence. So they asked us to use linking terms like first you do this, then you can do that, later you do this, next you do this. So if there is a certain order in which we want to give our instructions. So these are helpful but are not sufficient. So simple instructions to replace a light bulb. This is something that I am giving to tell you the difference between the connectors and the actual verbs that they have to use and the manner in which they have to use them. So this is not there in the textbook. I'm giving it to you to show the distinction between the two. So useful verbs for instructions. This is from the text. This is again not from the textbook. When do you say turn on? How can you replace turn on with switch on, put on? You don't say on the fan or off the fan. You say put on the fan or switch on the fan or turn off the fan. So these are things that they have to learn. These are useful verbs. This is how you make the connection between the grammar and the communicative concepts. So unless that link is established, there is no language skill enhancement that is happening. Yeah, so while giving directions, typical terms that we use, this is taken directly from the textbook. So typical prepositions that we use, appropriate prepositions that needs to be used while giving directions. Yeah, so this is an activity that I have added here. You can create many such activities. In fact, one of the tasks that I asked my students to do is, this is a dialogue where Salma asked, Radhika asks Salma to visit her home and gives her directions. Now, this is an activity that I have given. Of course, this is taken from the internet with slight changes in the terminologies, but that's okay. This will help them frame their sentences, frame their structures for giving direction. These are also phrases taken from the textbook. And one of the most enjoyed activity in my class is give directions to reach your school from your house. Something that I have done for 12 years, but never really bothered to note it down. So some of my students, when they did this, they really enjoyed, because it was a very fond recollection of their school days. So these are activities, they call it exercises again. Exercises or tasks or activities, I leave it to the reader to decide. And this is where communication becomes very, very crucial. Concepts of communication become very crucial. Now, reading feature articles. What are feature articles? And then what are editorials? And what is descriptive writing? Now, one very crucial thing which they miss, which the textbook misses in this, is that it is, luckily for them, it has fallen beautifully in place. There is a talk about what is fact and what is opinion. Now, fact is universal truth. Opinion is a particular person's point of view, which is debatable. So in a feature writing in magazine, a feature article would be a blend of fact and opinion. Some will be fact, some will be opinion. So the textbook teaches the learner how to write, how to read and write feature articles. It also teaches them about editorials, which is 100% opinion. It is the opinion of the editor that is mentioned in an editorial, which means the facts will not be recounted fully, but only that which is supportive of that opinion, of the person's opinion. Whereas descriptive writing is 100% only fact. You can't describe anything that is not there. So the ideas have beautifully fallen in place, but unfortunately the textbook does not, take this to that level, take these things to that communicative level. It could have done, but since it's not done, it's okay. We can do it in class. We can tell our students what to look for when they read a feature article, what to look for in an editorial, and what to look for in descriptive writing. So there are a lot of tips that they give on how to write feature articles, how to read feature articles. But what is most important is that it is a blending of fact and opinion, not fiction, fact and opinion. So the writer's point of view will definitely creep in every now and then, but the facts that are stated there will be true. So these are editorials. Editorials will definitely deal only with what the editor's point of view. There are certain tasks that are given. I mean, I'm using the word task because that's how it's stated in the book. On different topics. So you can write a feature article on unorganized labor. You can write a feature article on culture of physical fitness, which is gaining importance. And then you can write an editorial of how COVID-19 has been managed, because that's point of view. It could be an editorial on the merits and demerits of online classes. Again, it is point of view. So only those merits that are supportive of the point of view and those demerits that are supportive of the point of view will be given. So an editorial can never be complete. You must look for contrasting ideology newspapers to get both sides of the view. So grammar and context, the word verbals refer to, again, the definition is not clear here. Verbals refer to those words which appear like a verb but function as a noun or an adjective. If it appears like a verb and functions as a verb, it's infinitive. If it appears like a verb and functions as a noun, it is gerund. If it appears like a verb and functions as an adjective, it's a participle. This definition is absent, and I want the teachers to take this, your classes, when you deal with this. So, innumerable ideas are given in the internet. So, I have given you only a sample, but the internet has enormous ideas. So, that can also be shared with the student, but never lose sight of the fact that verbals are those that appear like a verb, but function as something else. Right. Now about modal verbs. Another thing with English is a two tense language. English has only past and present tense. There is no future. English has future, but English has no future tense. It is only indicated by the use of modal verbs. So we can't really say that I can come is future tense. It only talks about a certain condition. So modal auxiliaries talk about certain conditions. What are these conditions? It could be permission, it could be obligation, intention, desire, moral duty, necessity, and so on. So these are different conditions. And invariably, these are conditions that will express in the future, that will refer to the future, right? So therefore, they are called as future tense verbs, but they aren't. They are not future tense auxiliaries. They indicate only a certain condition. And even within this, one of the common mistakes that our students make, they say, can I come in, ma'am? Or can I come in, sir? Can is a verb that refers to ability. So if you can, if you know how to walk, if you know how to go to your place, you can come. So it's ability. It is not permission. When you want to ask for permission, you say, may I come in or could I come in? May and could are two modal auxiliaries that are used for asking permission. So another mistake that was very common, especially in South India, is can, able to, could, able to. Why is it wrong? It's wrong because can and able to refer to the same idea. So it becomes redundant. So can and able to refer to ability. Can be used directly with the main verb, whereas able is a main verb and therefore requires a be verb to go with it. I was able to come on time. I can come on time, but I'm able to come on time. So you need the more auxiliary, the be auxiliary, was or am, in order to use able to, because able is not an auxiliary verb, it is a main verb. Can is a modal auxiliary verb. That is the only difference. So the difference is not in meaning, the difference is only in use. Now we have to repeatedly tell our students, because can, able to, could, able to, I could not able to do this. That's something we listen to very often, and it is so jarring when we listen to such wrong use of these verbs. And yeah, so this is an example of how, when we take, connected to what we learned in the second unit, when we take pictures from the internet, not always are they correct. You can notice that can is used for permission, can is not used for permission. Can I sit here? If you know how to sit, if the chair can accommodate you, of course you can sit. So it is only ability. So cannot be used for permission unless over a period of time too many people use and it is accepted as Indian English. Just like, prepone is accepted as Indian English. There is no word prepone. It's only postpone. And Sashi Tharoor claims that he invented prepone. You never know. Anyway, so we must be aware of how certain words can be used and how certain words cannot be used. Both are important. So with that, we come to the end of Unit 3. So again, as I reiterated in the beginning, please do the grammar and context first and then move to the communicative concepts. There are no study skills here and therefore the unit is relatively short. So I'll stop this and go to the 4th unit. Are you able to see the slides? I never asked for it. I just assumed that all of you can.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It's visible.
Okay. Yeah. So here, continuing from where we left in the previous unit, there is giving and responding to opinions. It's called note taking, but actually what they do is note making. From descriptive writing, we move to narrative writing. So from writing a single paragraph, we move on to composing a short essay. And then grammar and context, it's tense, not tension. It's tense, present, past, and future, something that we discussed just now. So as I said, please do grammar in the beginning and then move on to the communicative concepts. Right. So facts and opinions. What is a fact and what is an opinion is discussed in detail here in this unit. But they have given articles that are a blend of fact and opinion, articles which are entirely opinion and articles which are entirely factual in the previous unit. And that is where somewhere the disconnect in the textbook is somewhat jarring. So if they had given this in the beginning and then moved to those type of passages, then the students could relate to the importance of feature writing or editorial or descriptive writing much better than if we talk about this later. So it's a fantastic idea. I have never come across a textbook that contains this idea. It's so beautiful. It has so beautifully fallen in place too. But they could have just rearranged. The textbook writers could have just rearranged the concepts. They could have had this in the 3rd unit and that here in the 4th unit. Anyway, so how do we know what is a fact? How do we know what is an opinion? Again, we saw this earlier. A lot of comparisons. It can be based on meaning. It can be something that has support. There is evidence for fact, something that is possible. There are witness to what has happened. It's universally accepted idea. And it is always expressed in very, very clear, trite words, set of words. Now, when you watch TV debates, someone who's talking the truth will state it once, at best twice, for emphasis. But if somebody is repeatedly saying that, there is something not said, something that is hidden, and therefore it is an opinion. So if it is a fact, you state it once, people will get it. You can state it twice for emphasis. But if you keep on repeating the idea over and over, then it means that it's the person's opinion and not a fact. So that is another clue by which we understand whether someone is stating an opinion or a fact. So opinions can be debated. Facts cannot be debated. It just has to be accepted. And facts has the power to influence others, because the moment you state facts, people will take it or trust it easily. Opinion, people will want to know the other side view and then make their judgments. frame their opinions. So there are a lot of ways by which you can define fact and define opinion. Now these are ideas that I have given, they are not given in the textbook. Right. So how do we understand, how do we distinguish fact from opinion? Literature offers fantastic support for this. So here is a description of the city of London, and here is a poem which was written by Wordsworth, an expression of Wordsworth's opinion on London. This is not given in the text. I have included it here, and we can clearly say how, when you read this, it's fact. You can read it only once. London is the capital of England. You can state it only once. You don't have to repeat it. Whereas earth has not anything to show more fair. So look at the hyperbole that he uses. There's no place on earth which is as beautiful as a morning London. So as though he's visited the entire world and has evaluated the mornings in every city. So he makes a very sweeping statement here. So it's so beautiful to read, but it is his opinion. For us, those of us who live on the seashore of Marina sunrise is probably the best thing that we can see. Someone living in Kanyakumari can have sunrise and sunset. So they can say the best mornings and best evenings are here. So that is perspective. And this is Wordsworth's perspective. And that is how opinion differs. Whereas facts will be the same. The city stands on the river Thames. Yes, it does not stand on the river Kaveri. The city of London is ancient, core and financial center. Yes, it was not a cultural center like Kanchipuram or Ujjain or Prayag or Kashi. So these are facts, and there is no second question about facts. Now every sentence here, every line here is debatable. Dull would see in its majesty. If someone does not admire this, then he is of a dull soul. Now that is a very sweeping statement. Someone may be in a hurry. There's some kind of emergency at home and they can't stand here to admire the beauty of the morning scene in London. So if that be the case, would you call that person a dull soul? No, this is Wordsworth's opinion. So anyone who does not toe this line is rejected. So that is Wordsworth's opinion, and that's how we distinguish opinion from fact. Yes. So again, we can see fact in our everyday conversation. When you say state fact, you state it in the minimum number of words, whereas when you state opinion, you try to expand it. That's why I said certain things you repeat and you expand it. You try to express the same idea in so many different ways. Yes, we teachers do that too. We express the same idea in many different ways, but that's not our opinion. It's for the students to understand what we try to say better. But if you notice, certain people have the tendency to say the same idea over and over again in different ways. So they are trying to convince the listener about what their opinion is. They are almost trying to thrust their opinion on others. But if it is a fact, they would state it once, they would state it twice and be done with it. So that is essentially the difference between opinion and fact. And you can best get it in feature articles or editorials or descriptive writing. So make the connection. Even if the textbook does not make the connection, we as teachers can make the connection and make it more interesting in our class. Okay, so here is a discussion between three people on a particular restaurant and a particular dish in that restaurant. And now they move to phrases to convey opinion. So when you want to convey your opinion, you would ask somebody if they would agree with you or not. So wouldn't you say so? Don't you agree with me? So these are follow-up questions which you give for an opinion. We never state this. London is the capital of England, isn't it? No, we don't. There is no tag there. Does not require a tag because it's a statement. Masala dosa at Saravana Bhavan is the best. Don't you think so? I think The world need not think the same. So that is an opinion. So opinion is always followed up with certain questions. So these are phrases, some more phrases here while asking for an opinion, while giving an opinion. All these make it very, very interesting. So the text does give a lot of useful information about how to agree with, how to disagree in formal context and informal context. All these definitely make the class very interesting if only we make the connections that are actually not there, but make it happen. Yeah. And then, of course, we go to note making. It's stated as note taking in the textbook, but it is actually note making. There are different formats for note making. There's a passage on Shakespeare and his uh, set of works that he has done, early life, the works that he has written, and the text shows how we can jot them using bullet points. Was I in unmute mode? Or was I in mute mode so far, Ma?
No, ma'am, no, ma'am. Just a minute only, ma'am.
Okay.
Now you have been back. Thank you.
Okay, okay. So do I go back?
No, ma'am. You can continue.
Continue. Yeah.
Just for a second only. Yes.
Oh,
ma'am.
okay, okay. Yeah. Thank you. So this is another way. This is a traditional way by which we make notes, and then of course there are other ways. It's a mind map. You can use a mind map. We can use abbreviations. We need to note down the abbreviations as and when we take notes. So some important tips. All these are fantastic, no doubt. But why do we have to take notes? Why are making notes necessary? When do we take notes? When do we make notes? We take notes when we listen to somebody's speech. Lecture notes, for example, you listen to the teacher speaking, and as the teacher speaks, as the teacher teaches, lecture notes are taken. And each student has their own way of writing it down. They use abbreviations, they use, in modern times, you have these texting language which comes in very handy while taking down notes. Yes, but making notes is a reading activity. You make notes while reading something. Now, why do we want to take notes? Now, here, this is something that you don't find in many language textbooks. They only tell us how to make notes. They seldom tell us why to make notes because the why aspect is somewhat biological. Now, what I would like to share with you here is we assume that it is only the brain that deals with memory, but actually the entire body is built with what is called as muscle memory. Our muscles have the ability to remember something. Say, for example, you walk home from your workplace. Do you tell your feet, do you tell yourselves that you have to get down at this station or this bus stop, or get down this side from the auto, and then you have to walk straight, you have to turn right, and then walk down that road, and then open the gate? Mechanically we do this. In fact, we will be thinking about something else. We'll probably be thinking about what to prepare for dinner, or the hot coffee that we would like to have, coffee or tea that we would like to have. Our mind will be thinking about something else, or the shopping that we have to do. So we may be thinking about 101 things, but our body will be moving in the right direction. How does this happen? Because our body has the capacity to remember what it normally does as a routine. So if our body is capable of remembering what is routine work, then I'm sure our fingers will also be able to remember what is routinely done. And that is the reason why in our childhood, people will ask us to write repeatedly, write 3 times, write 4 times. Why? Because the fingers will remember, even if our brain forgets, the fingers will remember what answer we have to write. Very often, even while we write, do we consciously say T, H, E? Now I cross the T and then put the. No, we don't do that. We think we have to write the and the finger automatically writes it. Excuse me. How does this happen? This is because there is something called as muscle memory in the fingers. So, excuse me. Yeah, so when we take down notes, when we read a passage, we will remember only close to 20% of what is there in the passage. When we make those notes, we probably remember 40% of what we have read. When we write those notes, compose those notes into a summary, we will remember close to 60% of what we have read. And when we revise it, the remaining 100% comes. So this writing alone contributes to 60% of the memory that we have about reading something. So you write it once, you remember at least 20%. Write it twice, you remember close to 60%. And if you write it on your own, probably you even remember 80%. So whenever we read, if we make notes then and there, then we will be able to recall what we have read at will. Now that is that is something very, very important for the learners. We emphasize on this idea while we teach them note making. They will take to note making very easily then, especially those who want to do well in life. So note making can also be done. This is another format, a flow chart for a sequential procedure. So these are all ways by which it can be done. There are a lot of passages that are given. Usually factual passages are given for note making. Opinions are not given. That is another point that can be stated. A complicated process, it can be noted in this form when there are multiple levels at which something happens. So complex procedures can be noted down in this form. So there are different kinds of different ways by which we can make notes. Another passage is very interesting, paper books and e-books. I don't think we ever talked in terms of paper books, but this article talks about paper books, not printed books or manuscripts. It talks about paper books. So that's an interesting concept there. But anyway, this is a passage on comparison and contrast. So it does talk about, it's more like an argumentative passage, not a debate, but an argument. So both sides of the argument are given. So different types of passages, comparison and contrast, narrative essays. What is so important about narration? Again, connected to fact and opinion. Descriptive passage is factual in nature. Narrative is opinion. We can bring in our own ideas. Speakers, the writer's ideas can be introduced here. And then what are the elements of a good narration, the structure, how important it is to arrest the attention of the audience through the writing. So all these are interestingly framed. And then, of course, we also have the different tenses of the verbs, right? How important tense is in verb. Now, what is important here is not the fact that English has past, present, and future tense, or the aspect that simple, continuous, perfect, and perfect continuous tense need to be considered, but why we use simple present tense, why we use simple past. Simple present tense is used when you talk about a routine habit or universal truth. When do we use simple past? When an action is completed in the past. Now that is crucial. I have given them all here. Now this is more important than telling them what is simple present or what is present continuous. Now present continuous is used only when an action is in progress. So I can say I am talking to you now, but I teach every day. I can't say I'm teaching. what do? I can't say I'm teaching. I can only say I teach, because that is something that I do every day. And then present perfect and past perfect. This is where maximum confusion happens. I have an interesting picture taken from the internet. So an event that began in the past, ended in the past, it's a one-time reference, is simple past. If it began in the past and continues to the present, it's present perfect. Remember the word continues, that progression should be there. Then it is present perfect. If it is an action that began in the past, it continued for some time and ended in the past, it is past perfect. Now, this is what we have to teach us children. They have to understand when to use present and past perfect. It is not enough if they know has and have are present perfect, had is past perfect. That is not enough. They should know the meaning, they should know when to use it. There's so much of talk about future perfect continuous can be ignored because we seldom use it, and it is used only in complex structures. Basic learners don't need to know that. It's enough if they know how to use it. They don't need to know too many details about it. Okay, so that's about tenses. Future continuous, future present, future simple future, future continuous, future perfect. All these are hypothetical ideas, does not require to be taught. Once they know present perfect and past, once they know how to use this, they will automatically know how to use future tense. So let's not focus on future, let's focus on simple and continuous present, simple and continuous past, simple and present perfect, and past perfect. So that is what we need to tell our students as far as grammar is concerned. So with that, we finish unit 4. I'll now move to unit 5. Unit 5 is relatively small compared to unit 1 and 2. Unit 5, it actually stands apart from the 4 units. There is no direct connection that you can see. It's almost a standalone unit. There is a group discussion. You can see a kind of a progression from introducing self, individual talk to paired discussion that you had, paired conversation to a small group discussion and a large group discussion. In that sense, there is progression. But in terms of the communicative competence that we talk about, it does not really blend with the other units. So here, reading and writing, again, the emphasis is on different kinds of text. The text need not be just descriptive essays. It could be infographics, maps, charts, and then expanding on language of, expanding on ideas, the comparison and contrast, writing essays. Grammar and context is voice, showing the relationship between tense and voice. But unfortunately, again in voice, there's a lot that they are missing. So group discussion, we all know what is group discussion, and this particular aspect here is not a general group discussion. They are talking about corporate group discussion that is done for assessment purposes. To some extent, it is essential, but I think we first have to get our students to discuss in a group. That give and take, that turn taking, that agreeing to disagree are far more important than making themselves conscious about being monitored or assessed. So let them first, these are things that that are stated in the text. So let them first understand how to discuss in a group without screaming at each other. Yeah, without screaming at each other, without putting the other down, but in a very polite manner, express how they can disagree with somebody. That is far more crucial. And in fact, that is where soft skills come into the picture. Now, there's another point that is stated here. They call it as personality traits, but knowing a little bit of psychology can tell you these are not personality traits. Personality per se is a combination of trait, attitude, and behavior. It's attitude that is most important. Trait is something that we are born with. We can never change. Swabhavam. We can never change. Never attempt changing the trait. Attitude is what changes with as we grow. As we grow and as we experience in life, our attitude also changes. And as our attitude changes, the behavior also changes. So the focus should be attitude. So they're talking about group discussion can enhance communication skills, interpersonal skills, leadership skills, motivation, team building, all those typical soft skill concepts they brought here. But no, group discussion is just sharing of information in a platform in a very, very neutral, polite manner. So if that has to be emphasized, once our students learn how to discuss in a group, they can be assessed or monitored. Thinking out of the box, taking initiative, this is the only thing that is directly related to group discussion. Sometimes what happens is people don't know what to say. So they will be sitting around and nobody knows what to talk. So somebody has to take that initiative to continue with the discussion. So that is a crucial skill. That is the skill that in all these, what we call as skills in group discussion, I think the taking initiative is the crucial one. The others are not stated here. The most important idea in a group discussion is agreeing to disagree. I may not agree with you, but I agree that you have the right to express your opinion. Now that has to be drilled into the minds of our learners, because our learners today, we deal with an impulsive, impatient generation who have no time for advice. So when elders give advice, take it or leave it, but that's okay if they leave it, but they cannot dismiss it, and that will break down the communication completely. So that dismissal is what they have to unlearn. So group discussion is a great way of bringing in these things. So these are very, very subtle soft skill concepts that is required in group discussion. So that can be emphasized rather than these skills. These are corporate group discussion, but we in our classroom can get the students to discuss about, look at the topics for discussion that they have given. Wasteful expenditure at weddings, consumer awareness, safety of industrial and construction workers. Now, unless the students are aware of what their problems are, how can they even discuss about safety? I've highlighted only those two things that probably are generic in nature. Promoting the fitness culture. The fitness is important, but it should always also be guided. We can't start doing physical exercises on our own without any kind of a guidance. So we must watch out when we give these kinds of topics. Not everybody can discuss. A lot of facts are required to discuss. Renewable energy. What do our students know about renewable energy? How much do they know? How much do we know? To even make it a point of discussion in a group. So we must be wary about the topics that we give our students to discuss. Generic topics will be greatly helpful. Okay, reading infographics. Different kinds of infographics are given. Some are interesting activities. Students may relate to them very easily. Pie graphs, how to analyze. Now, what is important about these graphs is they must be able to write a passage based on the graph. So these are all facts that are given, and their interpretation is their opinion. So many people, for example, entertainment, 51.2% of television watchers watch entertainment shows. So this is a fact. At least as far as this pie chart is concerned, this is a fact. Now the opinion will be people are starved of entertainment, probably due to lockdown. They are not able to go to the beach. They are not able to go to any theme park on a vacation, not able to visit anybody. And their only source of entertainment is the television shows that pertain to entertainment. And therefore 51%. So this kind of interpretation, of opinion making, we must get our students to develop. And that is where the communicative English, communicative skills come into the picture. So never lose sight, as I said yesterday, don't lose sight of the communication aspect in everything that we do. Yeah, so writing short essays using comparison and contrast. This is again a very interesting concept, but again, lot of practice is required when we deal with these kind of essays. So to compare, comparison is similarity between two things. Contrast is the opposing ideas in two things. So let them first bring in note making here. Let them read a passage and make notes of all those that fall in the column of comparison and all those contrasting ideas, and then expand each of them into a short paragraph and then compose essay. So that structure has to be given. This kind of object 1.1, object 1.2, students won't understand. Bring in note making here and let them brainstorm. Let them do a mind map on a particular idea. What do they think are comparable and what do they think are contrasting? Let them brainstorm, get all those ideas, and then on each of them, let them write a short paragraph. That way the essay can be constructed. So we need to blend ideas that are given in the previous unit. The ideas are not stated in the textbook, but we have to make the connection. This is what I said. This is a kind of a standalone unit. So some of the phrases that can be used, excellent. This is useful. But how these can be used is something that we have to do in class. And then voice, this is what they have given. How do we change the verb with reference to tense, active voice into passive voice? In active, you do the present simple, the simple present verb. Again, taken from the internet, there is nothing called as present simple. It is simple present. Similarly, there's nothing called as past simple. It is simple past. So we must be wary of what we take from the internet and we must make the corrections before we give it to our students. And that's the reason why I took this. And then I do my homework. My homework is done. This is, I did my homework. My homework was done. I don't think we ever use my homework is done. I did my homework. I do my homework. It's always the active form. The first person, very rarely we use the passive form. Anyway, it's given here. And we must, this is not used at all. So when we give such things from the internet, we must be cautious about what we are doing. Now, this is what is most important in active and passive, because there is a transportation of the subject and the verb. The subject becomes the object, the subject of the active becomes the object of the verb. In other words, we emphasize on the doer or performer, that is active. If the action is emphasized, then it is passive. The dog chased the cat, the doer is the dog, action is chase, that is active. The cat was chased by, the action comes first and then the doer, then it becomes passive. So this is what we need to tell them. And of course, how the verb changes, that is also important, but it is in the structure, we need to show the doer of the action, emphasize on the right action, and that is what is important. And that is what we need to focus on as far as voice is concerned. So with that, like Rajdhani Express or Toronto Express, I have run through the 5 units. I hope maybe if you listen to the talk repeatedly, you will get a hang of what has been done. I think I have kind of thrust too many things within a short period of time. But that's the best that I could do. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Open to interactions for about 5 minutes before we go to the valedictory.
Thank you so much for the informative session, ma'am.
Yeah, I'll start.
Participants are requested to post the questions in the chat box. Mona Priya, kindly handle the session.
Yes, thank you, Gayatri ma'am. Ma'am, the first question.
Yeah.
What will be the exam pattern, the question paper pattern for communicative English?
Yeah, I think the syndicate has passed that's what I heard from the university. The pattern has been suggested and that has been accepted by the syndicate. So I think we should hear from the university, if not this week, at least next week.
Thank you, ma'am. The next question.
Yeah,
What is the difference in the syllabus between communicative English and professional English?
exactly. When you look at the material, you may not know the difference, but I think the intention is pretty clear. In communicative English, the focus is on how to express ideas in certain format, right? Whereas in professional English, it is also learning and using language, same as communicative English, but the content will be from their domain. So arts and science students will have content from their domain so that they can talk about, see, eventually when you go to your workplace, you have to talk about what you deal with or what subjects you have studied. And one of the biggest challenges students face today is to express ideas of their domain in English. So if you ask a student to state Newton's law of motion, they will do that. First law of motion states that an object in a state of rest or motion or uniform motion continues to remain in that same state. They will state the law, but ask them to explain, they won't be able to explain. And that is where we pitch in. That is where we, in the sense, language teachers pitch in. We help them how to construct their sentences and explain that idea. So the content will be from domain and they will be made to explain those concepts in simple, easy to understand, easy to use language. So this is what professional in English intended. But unfortunately, the material that they have shared does not have this. So if you are interested, you can email me. I'm willing to share with the material that we prepared also in Tansky about a couple of years back. So we prepared 22 modules, 22 books actually, in 10 different subjects for 4 semesters. So we had physics, chemistry, computer science, botany, zoology, history, geography, English, economics, commerce. The skill sets that they learn will be the same across all the subjects, but the content that we use will be from their domain. So we'll take a passage from commerce and train them on using language, train them on active, passive, or imperatives, the language concept, but the content will be from their domain. So if you are keen, I'm willing to share those material with you. Just wire an email to me. I'll give you the Google Drive link.
Thank you, ma'am. There's a question from YouTube. What is the difference between note taking and note making?
Yes, I stated that in the talk too. Note taking is what you do when you listen. Note making is what you do when you read. The fundamental difference is with listening, you have limited time. So 50% will be on paper, the other 50% should be in your mind. You should have heard them, right? You should have heard them. And as you hear and listen, you register them in your mind. What you can't register in your mind, you note it down. So note taking is perhaps incomplete. It has to be completed. It requires to be completed. But note making is a passage that you read and you have enough time on your hand to read the passage and reread the passage and make notes simultaneously. So note taking is a listening comprehension skill. Note making is a reading comprehension skill. If you want it in those typical LSRW, ELT expressions. So this is how we can define. I hope I've made it clear.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. The
Yeah.
next question.
Hmm.
How far do you think that this paper will improve students' communicative aspects?
How far I can't tell you from Shasun Jain in T Nagar to Gindi. No, I can't give you distance. It all depends on how much we tell and how much they take, right? So we can give so much. Uh, in fact, what we give has to be copious. The more we give, the more they will retain. If what we give is limited, then what they see, we will, as it is, we are going to give only 50% of what is there in the global scenario. From that 50%, what the students listen, understand, remember, retain will be only 50 of that 50%. And from that, what they understand, what they remember will be even less. What they actually use will be even lesser. So you can imagine how little takeaway they will have from whatever we give. So if we give very little explanation and activities or concept description or concept definition, concept illustration, if our work is restricted, then what the students take will also be less. So that is the reason why I'm giving more and more. In all my PPTs, I have added a lot more than what the text contains. The text has a 60-40 ratio of theory and practice. There's only 40% of practice. So the remaining 60% we as teachers have to give. And I have suggested a few. You can use this as a clue and give more to the students.
Thank you,
So
ma'am.
that
Next
to
question.
when we do that, the best that we can derive is probably I have done what I can. Leave the rest to the students and Almighty.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. Can you give few suggestions for generic test?
Or
For generic test.
generic test. I don't understand what the person means by
Miss
generic.
Lakshmi, are you there?
Can you explain what you mean by generic test? See, generic refers to something that is general, not specific. So a general, if what you mean is general test in language, then you can test any skill. Not necessarily grammar, not necessarily pronunciation, not spelling alone, not sentence structure, not meaning. You can have an assorted combination. But if it is specific, then if you are testing specifically for their reading abilities or specifically for their comprehension abilities, then your test should also be focused on that. Why are you assessing? What is your aim in giving the test? Don't give random tests. When you ask a question, you should know why you ask that question. You should know what you expect the student to know by way of answering this question. So, what is it that the student ought to know when the student answers this question? That we must be clear about the aim of the test, not scoring marks, or language is not meant for scoring. In fact, I would, one of the probably non-conformist in nature, but I don't want language tests to be evaluated by us uh, ascribing points to it, attributing points or marks to it. Don't have scores for language. Can they do this? To what extent can they do this? To what extent where were they at the beginning and where are they now? How far have they moved? Do a diagnostic before you start the class. See where your students are. 1 week later, give the same test again and see if they are able to answer. Has there been a difference? Has there been a progress? 1 month later, give the same test. See what the progress is. That is how language has to be assessed. Language cannot be assessed by answering correctly, give 3 marks. No, you cannot assess language skills like that. Language skills have to be assessed only qualitatively, not quantitatively. Yeah,
Thank you, ma'am. One last question. Apart from LSRW, are there other skills identified in language learning in the recent years?
I think that was the first slide I showed. LSRW is outdated. We talk about language input and language output. Input skills are receptive skills, what you receive from an external source. And productive skills are what you are capable of producing by using, in terms of using language. So we've moved out of LSRW. LSRW is no longer the norm in ELT circles. If someone talks about LSRW even today, then they are not up to date in their ELT research. So today ELT talks about receptive and uh, productive skills. We do not talk about LSRW. And when we say receptive skills, we look at all possible sources from which we can learn language. It need not necessarily be only a reading text or a speech that we listen to. There can be so many other sources for language, right? Particularly when we add nonverbal skills, your dimensions of receptive and productive skills expand exponentially. Yeah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. There are
Yes.
no more questions. Over to Professor Gayatri.
Yeah. Sure.
Thank you, Ms. Mona Priya. I would like to express my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Sumati Shivakumar for the wonderful sessions on receptive and productive skills in English communication. The valuable inputs given on how to approach the students made us aware of the effective teaching methodology of communicative English. Through her presentations, Dr. Sumati made us think about the feasible and innovative ways to reach the students. I hope the participants must have imbibed the crux of Madam's presentations and implement the techniques in their classrooms. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the wonderful session.
Thank you so
Now,
much.
yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Now it's time for us to start the valedictory session. May I request Dr. Santosh Smita, Head of the Department of English, to present the welcome address. A very pleasant good evening, ladies and gentlemen, galaxy of intellectuals, invited resource persons, Dr. Kalanidhi, Dr. Sumati Shivakumar, respected Vice Principal Dr. S. Rukmani, faculty members, and all the participants from different prestigious institutions across the country. I extend a hearty welcome to all of you for the valedictory function of the Faculty Development Program. An investment in knowledge pays the best interest, said Sir Benjamin Franklin. I am sure that everyone who has invested their precious time for this faculty development program will treasure it in years to come. We hope that this 7-day FDP has enriched the faculty vitality in the key domain of teaching communicative English and will also enhance the academic performance of the learners in future. Once again, I welcome all. Thank you, ma'am. May I request Ms. Rohini Unnikrishnan, Assistant Professor, Department of English, to present the FDP report.
Thank you, Ms. Gayatri, ma'am. A pleasant evening to one and all present here for the one-week faculty development program. All our knowledge begins with a sense, proceeds then to the understanding, and ends with the reason. There is nothing higher than the reason, by Immanuel Kant. It's my honor to submit the report on the one-week faculty development program organized by the IQAC and the Department of English of Sri Shankarlal Sundarbai Shashan Jain College for Women. The one-week faculty development program spiritedly commenced on 3rd December 2020 with the inaugural session graced by Dr. Jayasudha Tyagarajan, COO, Sankalp Cell, NIMI, MSD, GOL. Dr. Jayasudha Tyagarajan addressed the gathering on the importance of English and its pivotal role in enhancing the employability. She mainly dealt with the criterion reference test, which is designed to measure the student performance against a fixed set of predetermined criteria or learning standards. Additionally, she gave a crux on second language acquisition, pedagogical learning. After the inaugural address, the first fruitful session was rendered by Dr. LRS Kalanathy, Vice Principal, Students Affairs, Guru Nanak College, Chennai, on the topic redefine self-sets to refine communicative English. Dr. Kalanidhi ma'am shared a perspective on National Education Policy 2020 and redefining our skill sets. She began with a set of rhetorical questions by asking us through the path of introspection, self-actualization, self-assessment, self-realization, and also shared her ideas on the redefining the higher order thinking skills. The session was highly informative and thought-provoking. The day 2 FDP session was continued by Dr. LRS Kalanidhi ma'am. She spoke on the overview of English language and the components of it. She gave an importance on the kinds of skills that should be refined, such as discipline skills, classroom management, observation skills, student engagement, effective communication, teaching skills, subject knowledge, time management, and clear planning skills. The whole session exceptionally enlightened the thought process of the participants. Every day with a new beginning and learning, the day 3 session began on 5th December 2020. The day was graced by Dr. Beena Anil, Vice Principal and Assistant Professor of English from SDNB Vaishnav College for Women. Dr. Beena Anil elucidated on the topic communicative English, how to and how not to. On day 3, she threw light on the not to aspects of communicative English. She addressed on the myths about learning the language. She gave a crystal clear explanation on the evaluation of education and modern learning methods. She made us to understand the role as a digital learning facilitators in Education 5.0. She insisted that every English teacher should inculcate the four competent skills in the minds of the students like project-based teaching, creativity, communication, and collaboration. It was an enriching and engaging session. On day 4, the session was resumed by Dr. Beena Anil. She visually engaged us by showing a video and the importance of using the technology in education. She insisted on the positive aspects in every teacher to become a champion teacher with a futuristic outlook. She taught us how to customize all available apps to take English to our students who are digital natives. Every learning takes us to a new path to imbibe the knowledge. The day 5 session began on 8th December 2020 with another efficient resource person, Dr. Sumati Shivakumar, Assistant Professor of English, AIMGIN College, Chennai. Dr. Sumati ma'am enriched our minds on the topic receptive and productive skills in English communication. Ma'am gave a clear-cut direction as how the communicative English should be taken to the students as planned by Tanshi. She discussed on how communication skills is formulated by both the language skills and soft skills. She rendered a well-defined explanation on Unit 1 with respect to listening, speaking, and reading skills. The session helped everyone to know the nuances of communicative English. Last day of this FTP was rendered by eminent resource person Dr. Sumati Shivakumar. She thoroughly explained on the other 4 units in communicative English. The session was truly enriching and inspiring. To sum up, we hope that all the session was highly informative and thought-provoking. We are happy to announce that approximately 650 viewers have watched this 1-week FTP on our college YouTube page. Every day, we received more than 200 participants' feedback. I thank all the participants for your tremendous support in joining us throughout the week. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rohini. We would like to listen to the feedback from the participants now. May I request Mr. Mohammed Sharik, lecturer, University of Bisha, Al Namas, Saudi Arabia, to share a few words.
Okay, thank you for giving this opportunity. I would really like to thank the college for organizing such a wonderful program.
Sir, excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Could you turn on your video?
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Is it? Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm really thankful to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my views. It was really a fruitful and amazing time for me. Besides, it was a great learning experience, like all of us must have enjoyed it. and learned a lot. Actually, the sessions of Dr. LRS Kalinidhi, Dr. Beena, Dr. Sumati Shivkumara, we thank them for sharing their valuable experiences with her, and hope that college will conduct such workshops periodically for benefit of students and staffs. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the valuable feedback, sir. Now, I request Dr. Sashi Srivatsa, Assistant Professor, Dayal Bagh Educational Institute, Agra, to register her feedback.
Good evening, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
A very good evening to all of you. I just wanted to begin with the quote from Karl Barth. Joy is the simplest form of gratitude. We all are very happy at the end of this FDP because we have learned a lot and we have taken in so much from all of you. I want to thank the principal ma'am, Dr. S. Padmavati, the vice principal ma'am, Dr. Rukmani, the HOD, Santosh Sumita ma'am, the convener of this FDP, Professor V. Gayatri ma'am, and all the family members of the Department of English of Sri Shankarlal Sundarbai Sashwan Jain College for Women, Chennai. But I would say it was a very enlightening FDP for all of us. And we are also grateful to the resource persons, Dr. Kalaniti ma'am, who had told us something about the questions on introspection, self-actualization, that once again inspired us to be justified with not only our profession, but also to ourselves. And certainly, whatever she told us had to be about the latest in the field of phonetics. Then Beena Anil ma'am also told us the importance of the technological assets for the revolution in online teaching. We are also grateful, and we learned a lot from Sumati Shivkumar ma'am about the receptive and productive skills. Ma'am has very elaborately explained the tips for effective communication, the GDs, all the 4 skills and the soft skills, etc. I would just say that I think all the participants would agree with me that all the sessions were very illustrious, explicatory, and motivating. All the resource persons were enriched with not only knowledge but also excelled in the manner of communicating their ideas and expertise remarkably. We thank the technical team of this FDP also, and we look forward to such enlightening sessions, events, or webinars, whatever you organize, to keep us updated and to enable us to serve the nation by bringing some refinement among the future pillars of the nation. Once again, in the end, I would like to quote the words of Henry Ward. I quote here, "Gratitude is the fairest blossom which springs from the soul." Once again, a very, very big thanks to all of you. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, Dr. Sashi, for the encouraging words. Now I invite Mrs. V. Bhagyalakshmi, Assistant Professor, Dr. Umayal Ramanathan College for Women, Karaikudi, to share a few words.
Good evening, ma'am. Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. You're audible.
Yes. Thank
if
you,
possible,
ma'am.
Please turn on your video.
Yes, ma'am. I'll try to, ma'am.
It's okay, ma'am.
Distinguished members of the management of SSS Jain College, Chennai, respected principal, vice principal, respected head of the department, the convener of this FDP program, Ms. V. Gayatri, the co-convener and other faculty members of the Department of English, the most inspiring resource persons, Dr. LRS Kalanati ma'am, Dr. Beena Anil ma'am, and Dr. Sumati Sivakumar ma'am, and our ever enthusiastic participants, a very pleasant good evening to all. I'm really happy and fortunate to attend this FDP program. I thank the management wholeheartedly, and through Dr. Kalaniti ma'am only I came to know of this FDP program. So a special thanks to her. On the first 2 days, Kalaniti ma'am gave an overall view of the new educational policy and the moral aspects of teaching out of her 30 and more years of experience. Being her student, I have always witnessed how considerate she is towards uplifting student community. And over the years, her compassion ripens. Thank you very much, ma'am. On third and fourth day, Dr. Beena Anil ma'am has, to a vast extent, covered the technical aspects of communicative English. As ma'am told, through MOOC, I have been learning one course at least per semester. That is my target, ma'am, to upgrade my teaching, especially learning the recent pedagogy. The sites and applications that Beena ma'am has suggested are really helpful. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for that. Next, the 5th and 6th day sessions, I mean yesterday and today, Dr. Sumati Sivakumar ma'am has done a scrutiny on the prescribed communicative English paper. Hats off to her. And she has made clear to us what aspect of the language skills to be dealt in what degree. Thank you very much, ma'am, for that. The resource persons have in abundance shared their knowledge as well as their experience with us. We wholeheartedly thank all the resource persons for that. Thank you very much. My special thanks to the management of SSS Jain College. We in turn as teachers have re-identified ourselves academically as well as morally through this 1 week long FDP program. Please do keep us connected by conducting such programs, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Bhagyalakshmi.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Now, may I request the Vice Principal, Dr. S. Rukmani, to deliver the valedictory address.
Thank you, Gayatri ma'am. The capacity to learn is a gift. The ability to learn is a skill. The willingness to learn is a choice. I am very happy that all of you have made the right choice to attend this 1 week faculty development program organized by the IQAC and the Department of English of Sri Shankarlal Sundarbai Shasun Jain College for Women. The objective of the FDP was to augment the knowledge of the faculty members of educational institutions from various fields. Every learning is a curve for essential growth. Every learner is a creator who could enrich the mind through the process of learning. It is noteworthy that we teachers are constantly endeavoring to equip knowledge, and the process is perennial. This in turn enables us to persuade our students to explore their skill sets. Sharing one's knowledge for the benefit of others is a virtue. I am delighted that this faculty development program served as a platform for one such thing. I am deeply indebted to all the resource persons for making this FTP a resounding success by inspiring the participants and elevating them through the topic communicative English. I thank all the participants for the involvement shown throughout the FTP. Your positive feedback will definitely motivate us to do more. I congratulate the Department of English for conducting this FTP in a successful manner. My best wishes for all their future endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Now it's time for us to show our gratitude. It's time for us to present the vote of thanks. Good evening to one and all present here. The vibration of gratitude attracts more positive thoughts into your life. On behalf of the Department of English, I'm extremely delighted to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. Let me register my gratitude to the Almighty for bestowing the blessings to organize a 1 week faculty development program on communicative English in a successful manner. I express my sincere thanks to the management for permitting and giving us the opportunity to conduct the FTP. I deem it my honor to thank the principal, Dr. S. Padmavati, for her encouragement and guidance given in the conduct of the event. I wholeheartedly thank the Vice Principal, Dr. S. Rukmani, for the valuable advice and guidance rendered from the day one of her preparation to conduct the event. I extend my thanks to all the program coordinators, the HODs, and the staff members of various departments of the college for their support. I am privileged to thank Dr. Jayasudha Tyagarajan, COO, Sankalp Cell, NIMI, MSDE, Government of India for inaugurating the 1 week FTP. My heartfelt thanks goes to the resource persons, Dr. S. Kalanidhi, Vice Principal, Shift 1, Students Affairs, Guru Nanak College, Chennai. Dr. Beena Anil, Vice Principal and Assistant Professor of English, SDNB Vaishnav College, Chennai. Dr. Sumati Shivakumar, Assistant Professor of English, AM Jain College, Chennai. who have accepted our invite to enlighten us with their knowledge in spite of their busy schedule. I would like to register my sense of appreciation to all the participants across the country and overseas for their consistent and enthusiastic participation on all these days. I would like to quote, "Teamwork makes the dream work. The Department of English makes the saying true." At this juncture, it's my duty to acknowledge Dr. Santosh Smita, Head of the Department of English, and the faculty members of the department, Ms. Karpagam, Ms. K. Gayatri, Dr. Deepa, Ms. Chandani, Ms. Rohini Krishnan, and Ms. Mohana Priya, who imparted their moral support, valuable guidance, and effective coordination from time to time throughout the process of the FTP. I would like to acknowledge the technical assistance rendered by the CIO, Ms. Srividya. A special thanks to Ms. Niranjana, technical assistant, for her timely help on all these days. Once again, I thank you one and all. Participants are requested to submit the feedback form. Certificates will be made to the registered mail IDs of the participants within a month. For your information, the recorded sessions of the FTP are available on the YouTube page of Sri Shankar Lal Sundarbai Sashun Jain College. Thank you all for your effective participation.